Hi, this is a message to my family, and it also extends to the whole of British society as well. And I know that a lot of you will be upset with me about the fact that I've disclosed what happened to our family because of the shame and the embarrassment and guilt and self-loathing and self-destruction that we've been living with for years. And that's why I made the video, because it is time for people to face reality and to face the truth of it, exactly what is going on in this world, in this youth that is thriving on this planet, that is part of this universe. And the point is that our planet is the creation of our universe, and it belongs to the universe. It doesn't belong to individual people. And what I've tried to show is how thoughts control people, thoughts that exist in the world that we're born into, thoughts that have been around for centuries and centuries, that infect our minds. And there has been a battle going on between intelligence and stupidity. Okay, and the thing is that our heart needs to be connected to our intelligence. So the heart that is most with intelligence, universal intelligence, but stupid thoughts, they are selfish thoughts, malicious thoughts that seek to own and control your universe, everybody's universe, that they seek to own and control our planet and to, say how we must all live. But what right have those thoughts got if they're not based on any true intelligence that has no true connection to the heart, but instead they lie and people believe them, and then their hearts get connected to those lies. And that's what's happened in this world, is that people have more empathy and compassion for child abusers than they do for their victim survivors. And that is exactly what has happened in our family, and I feel that I've been battling against this malicious consciousness from the day I was born. And you, my family, know that what I've shared in that video it's just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it, of what happened to us as children, what we had to live through, the horror, the violence, the aggression. And you all know what happened when I got evicted from the family home. Except you were all told lies, weren't you? You all believed that I had ran away to go and live with a prostitute. That's what you were told, and that's what you believed for many years. And even though I came along and put you right and said, well, if I'd ran away, why didn't they come and get me back? I was only a few doors away. Why was this woman being paid to look after me then? You see, their lies, the lies that these people tell never make sense when you really look at them. There's big holes in the sense. And I live by sense. I was forced to live by sense because I was brought up in absolute nonsense of our psychopathic, alcoholic, gambling father, so-called. And I had to survive through sense, and my sense connected me to the universe. And to me, really, that was the only real thing, the only thing that made sense to me was the universe. This world did not make any sense, and I did go searching for sense. You all know I did my best. I got educated. I researched. I was searching for sense from man as a being. That what is this man? You know, what are we as man? And, you know, we're living in a world where people can be put in jail for carrying a bag of green herbs, but an assault, sexual assault against a child, is considered a minor offence. And so what kind of a consciousness is that to be ruling our world, to be ruling our universes? Because inside us all, we each have our own universe. And everybody has their own star to shine, to contribute something to our world. And the idea isn't to, you know, raise our children and measure and judge them as, oh, you're inferior, you're superior. You're going to be, you know, a top psychologist. Oh, you're going to be a shop assistant. It really doesn't matter what, as long as people are happy doing what they're doing and they're good at what they're doing, then they are equally contributing, they're equally valuable. You know, the brain surgeon is as much dependent on the shop assistant, and both have a right to equal respect, equal access to justice through the law. And that's the thing about universal law, is it's there for everybody. It isn't there just for people who've got money. It doesn't minimise crimes that have been committed by people who've got money. And in fact, according to universal law, the more power somebody has in this world, then the more terrible is considered their crime, because they know what they're doing. They have a greater responsibility. That's why people have power. It's for responsibility. It isn't so they can swan around in big black cars and, you know, have a load of gold jewellery on them. That is such a childish, silly way. You know, and this is what I mean, we're being governed by what some would call a childish mentality, except it isn't childish at all. It's an antiquated consciousness, and it is destroying the real children of our world, and it is infecting them, and it is so powerful now. It controls the media, it controls even our military, but at the same time that these, you know, thoughts are flying through the consciousness and controlling us, the malicious thoughts, the universal stars, they're all shining from within. And I'm shining from within our family as a microcosm, as a lead and a guide to show, look, I'm not the only star here, how many stars does it take to create a planet Earth? And the children of our family are stars. And, it is time to give them, to think about them, those children that we've been conditioned just to bring into this world unquestioningly, to have this unquestioning faith that it's worth bringing children into this world. They're going to have a life, they've got hope, there's a future for them. And we people do that unquestioningly. Like there's just this blind faith. And that's the whole point, is that people have been blinded because they're not realising the bigger picture. They're being distracted and blinkered by these thoughts that really aren't real. They're only real by the strength of the foundations of their own history, the buildings that they still cling to. You notice, all the working class homes, they've all been demolished. All our little villages and communities, all demolished. But their castles and palaces all still stand. And I'm not saying we should demolish them, because I don't believe in waste. But what I'm saying is that the powers that created those institutions, the thoughts that built them, and that then pass on that power to future generations, they're all still there. And the human psychology is constantly being infected with these judgments against women about the status of a child. A child is considered a minor human being, a less important human being. So once you've accepted that a child isn't really that important, well, straight away you're helping. You've been conditioned to accepting that the crimes that are being committed against children are just minor. And even without even being consciously aware of it, then your heart, therefore, is disconnected from its true path, which ought to be that, no, I'm sorry, children are not minors, they're very important, and a crime against a child is a very serious matter. Instead, your heart is connected to children are not that important, and any crimes against them aren't really that important, they're minor. And from there you will find it easier to live in their world, because if you're truly connected to your heart, it's going to be really, really difficult. You're going to have a lot of problems because they are not connected to the heart. The powers that are controlling the world are not connected to the heart. And so that's why a lot of victims of abuse do turn to alcohol and drugs. And so they're then re-victimised and criminalised by a world that then criminalises the victim's medicine. So the victims then end up being involved in drug crimes and committing all kinds of crimes that they were not born to commit, but that the world has conditioned people to commit. And it's been going on for such a long, long, long time, to the extent that, if you look at America, and you can see the survivors of the slave generations, how still that population is suffering neglect and abuse, and are being, they're virtually being preordained into being tomorrow's criminals just by the oppressive force of the history and the continued ignorance that there's any remaining damage. And ignorance that, the thoughts can accept that all the money and wealth and power that was gained through committing the crime of slavery, okay, that all of that can be passed on to future generations, but they do not accept the reality as well, that all the psychological, emotional and physical damage that was done to those people has not been passed on to through their generations equally, and it's equally as powerful in its impact. It's just that they have the material, these are left with the spiritual. And isn't it amazing when you look at the 1960s and you look at all the oppression that the descendants of African slaves in America had suffered, the utter absolute degradation, and look what came out of all that was Martin Luther King, and the compassion in that man. He understood that we're all victims. Keith is a victim as well, but unfortunately is a dangerous victim, and he does need outing. It isn't something I enjoy doing. I know what kind of shame and embarrassment it's going to be for him, but what have our family had to live with? What have the children had to live with? And don't forget, he was the man who condemned my nieces and nephews, or our nieces and nephews, to a home of neglect, just in order to protect himself, because he was afraid that if social services got involved to help them, then our niece might mention abuse that he'd inflicted against her. That in order to protect himself, he was prepared to let 4 children, he was prepared to put them at risk, at serious risk. And, nephew, yourself, I asked you, was it all right when you went back home, when they sent you back home after he'd done that to Sarah? And you said, no, it wasn't, Auntie Debbie. I phoned Childline anonymously 12 times in the first 3 months of going back. So a person that can knowingly leave children that is insisted call him granddad at risk, and not try to help, not even try to help the dad. So what is his professionalism really about? It's not to serve society, is it? Like the shopkeeper is serving, the shop assistant is serving this society. His job is purely to serve himself and his kind. And even if he's not consciously serving his kind, just by self-serving, he is serving his kind, because all the self-servers do support and serve each other, and they do recognise each other, and they do invite each other into powerful positions wherever there's an opening and an opportunity. And so we've got a union. They operate as a union. And this is, what I mean of how they keep us distracted with, fighting against Muslims or fighting against this. But actually, no matter where you go in the world, the problem is always these people who think that they can live outside the law, who do not want to respect a child's rights, who think they should be controlling and governing everybody, who think they should own our whole planet, who think that they should control our future. how can they control our future when they cannot respect a child, when they do not understand a child, and even all that they do understand of a child, they will use to exploit and abuse that child. So, whatever knowledge they gain, they turn it to the bad, like nuclear power. I mean, what is that all about? And when you think of the way our minds have been so conditioned for centuries that the whole world, after the Second World War, tolerated the bombing of Japan, atomic bombs dropped on Japan, and yet America still came out of that as a good country, and yet they'd inflicted the most terrible horror on a nation that had never been known. And what is life if it can't deliver a child into a sane world? What is the point of having a brain if we're not allowed to live intelligently? And we're not living intelligently because intelligence doesn't favour the antiquated thoughts. They are parasitical thoughts, and they infect us all. We're all hosts, and that's why I say everybody is a victim that's alive today. Everybody's a victim of these thoughts, but we need to learn how to survive them and to cast them out and connect with the true thoughts, the thoughts connected to the truth that tell us a child is a VIP. So what is this world doing to help the child? I hear lots of people complaining about abortion, wanting to ban abortion. I don't hear any people offering to help look after the children that would otherwise have been aborted. I don't hear as many people complaining about the levels of child trafficking, of caring for the children that are here. And again, we get that catch-22 situation where the world is so bad and it's so difficult to raise a child that more women are choosing to abort until they're absolutely sure that they're in a position of stability to be able to give that child the love and attention their child needs. But the answer is, apparently, to force women who don't feel ready to be a mother, who haven't got the stability and means to provide for a child, to force her to have that child as a moral issue, but at the same time provide her with absolutely nothing to assure her that her child has even got a chance in this world beyond ending up in prison or as a drug addict or as the next rape victim or CSA survivor if they're lucky. It's a very serious matter, raising children, and it's been trivialised and commoditised. And these beautiful little stars that are our children, they are our true treasure, not the banker's gold. And yet the banker's gold is buying our children. People believe in that gold so much they are buying our children. And as I say, it is all happening through a psychology, a process of conditioning, that we accept certain things and then our hearts follow what is accepted. So our hearts are connected to lies. And so we feel love, more love for an abuser than we do for a victim. And it's only when we connect to the actual truth that then we can realign our hearts. And we understand what is important and what isn't important. And you know what, the things that Keith did to our family and the kind of work that he's been involved with and the issues, it is really, really important that that is exposed, because it does fundamentally question the whole of our education system, the whole system that we're living in, because somebody like him could pass through. A sadist could pass through. A psychopath can pass through. People who harm children can pass through and get to the top. So that is really serious, because it means that there are no gatekeepers between who gets to dictate and have most power in our consciousness. That clearly the gatekeepers are about letting people like Keith pass through. Is that because they trust him? So why should we trust this whole system and everything that is going on in our world on the strength of it? And we can't change the whole world, but we can each change our individual selves, and we can each stand up for our rights, and we can each challenge the system that now threatens to take control of the whole of our human future, and even has power over our DNA. There is a need for the law to be established, because once you're getting into the realms of messing around with human DNA and the genetics of life, then you really, really need to be sure that the people who are in control of such knowledge and have access to such power are truly intelligent people who are truly coming from a place of universal intelligence and universal love. Because if they're not, if they're coming from here, then it's it is a vision of hell, isn't it? And we can solve our problems. There are a lot of viable solutions, but the most viable solution is for us to love each other and not to hate the people who've hurt us. All you can do is have pity on them, because they have to now face their crimes, as we have had to live with the damage that we've suffered through their crimes. And they have been relying on our shame and guilt and embarrassment to protect them from having to face theirs. So really, because it actually wasn't our shame and guilt, was it? It was theirs. And they dumped it on us, left us to carry it, so they can become the superheroes of society, and everybody adores them. They are lovely people, aren't they? Keith's a lovely, wonderful man who, helped the miners and stood up for women's rights and supported Nelson Mandela. But why? I know that it seems like my mum doesn't seem at all like a very nice person, according to, my disclosure. But you all know that I did stay around, and I did still help my mum a lot throughout her life, and that I did always understand that she was very severely damaged, and she was so easily controlled and so easily manipulated. You all know that, and you all know that at heart she was really a good woman. If she hadn't been so abused, she would have been amazing. But unfortunately she was that abused, and she was compromised, and she was a victim all her life. And she was very, very confused. And you all know the levels of power and control that Keith did have over her. And she was in many ways like she seemed to me like a little girl. She didn't really have faith in anything, did she? She'd lost faith in God after our sister died. She was lost, and Keith was like her anchor. He became her anchor. So I do understand why she chose him over me. And if he was her anchor, and she's got 5 other children to support, then sacrifice one for the sake of the others. She just had no idea that in fact all of the children were then put at risk because I wasn't there. Instead, I was being even more abused by strangers. And meanwhile, you were all left to be abused by our brother, who, let's face it, as a psychologist, Keith should have he knew what he was like. He should have immediately been getting him into therapy, but he didn't, did he? He just let him be. And, I think that he knew fully well that our sister was being abused by that brother. And I think that was why he went so crazy when he saw my mum was starting to crack and had agreed to let me stay at the house. Maybe he was scared about what I might find out while I was there. And I remember one of you, my brothers, telling me, I'm 10 now, when you were 26. You said that's how many years I've had away from being our brother. And, that's why I know there is compassion in our family, because we have, despite all the things horrible things that people have done to us, we have tried, to forgive and forget and get along and, be patient, tolerant. We have exhibited, we have done that. And where's it got us as a family? As a family that's produced another generation of children. And what is their future? These are the things that our mom, our own parents, were too distracted from asking. They thought our futures were guaranteed. We had an NHS, free schooling, everything. Things that they hadn't had as children. They thought our futures were guaranteed. Can we say the same about our children's futures? And, I know I've always been different from the family because I've always been one step ahead in that sense because I was forced to. You know, what my abusers, you know, they say what doesn't kill you make you stronger, and what my abusers did was they did make me strong. I had to get strong. That wasn't their intention to make me strong. It's just that by some miracle I survived, like a flower that grows between the cracks in the concrete. And I survived, and I understood. And so why do you think, you know, I've only had one child, and I tried to rescue you as children from that house because I understood. I'd seen what had happened to my mum, to my grandma, to generations of battered women creating battered daughters to be battered wives, to have battered children, for a cycle to keep continuing. And it is all derived from a consciousness that has arisen its power structures through abusing women and children and denying them their universal rights. That crime has never been atoned for. Telling women they've got a right to live like men is not equal rights, you know, and still our children are labelled as minors legally. That's the legal definition of a child. You might think that's not important, and, you know, I'm mad for questioning such things, for daring to step into such higher realms of thought. But it's not a higher realm of thought, is it, when it's your child standing in front of you, has been judged by this world as a minor, less important human being? That's reality. Facing reality is facing the judgments that have been issued against humanity and that have created a particular type of psychology. And that psychology needs arresting, not punishing, persecuting. It's a waste of time punishing. They do need incarcerating and being given intensive psychiatric therapy. And the thing is that, yes, there's going to be loads of them at first. We have to accept that. So, you know, we're going to need things like gated prison communities that are run more or less self-sustainably, and where the occupants have to participate in regular sessions of therapy so they can be analysed and assessed to see who might be able to be trusted in the open community and who might not. The idea is to prevent by having centres, that public centres, services where people who feel, if they feel they've got an attraction to a sexual attraction to children, they can go and get help before they commit any crime, where it's understood that that person who has those feelings is actually a victim. They're a host that has been targeted by these criminal thoughts, and that has forced their heart to align with them. Maybe they have been a victim of abuse themselves. So, you know, it's to put the mind right. It's not to punish and persecute people. We have to accept that everybody is born innocent, and the thoughts that inhabit them are the product of this world. And let those thoughts die with those people now, as those people pass away, and let the new, true children's thoughts come through, and accept those children. All are equally important, all are equally valuable. It doesn't matter how rich their parents are, what colour skin they have, what gender they are. Okay, what is important is that they are precious and they have something bright and wonderful to give to our world, and and to contribute to our world. And these thoughts have no right to feed off them for their own, for nothing more than their own whims and fantasies, you know. And because those kind of children, they care about the environment. They won't make the kind of scientists who don't unleash something like nuclear power, you know. Those kind of scientists from these little star children who are valued and appreciated as much as this world now appreciates gold, you know, they're the kind of consciousness. We wouldn't have a nuclear power station until we knew exactly how to deal with a nuclear melt-through. And that, you know, this consciousness has had its day, it's had its freedom, it's got away with its lies for centuries and centuries, and they've just moved on, never really atoned for any things that they've done wrong, never really compensated their victims. And we can see it today. Look at Africa, the wealthiest nation on earth, and the people in abject poverty, most of them working like slaves, you know. And people now, you know, even Britain now, we've been persuaded to leave the EU as if it was some, you know, insidious global power, when in fact, why shouldn't Europe unite? America's united, the whole of Europe's not much bigger than America, so why shouldn't Europe be united? Why shouldn't Africa be the United States of Africa, which Colonel Gaddafi was trying to do? Why shouldn't Britain be part of a United States of Europe? And the reality is, this is what they want to deny to us, European Union law. That is what the world powers do not like, because it doesn't give, it supports and upholds human rights. It establishes child protection directives. It protects the environment. Okay? I'm not saying it's absolutely perfect and that we know the EU is corrupt. We know every power on earth is corrupt. That goes without saying. All need cleaning out. But that doesn't mean we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. Look at the baby. Okay? Because it's not immigrants that are a threat to our children's future. It's lack of human rights, lack of law, lack of direction. And, you know, now we the British people, we have no law. You know, instead we're all being encouraged to ignore the fact that our law and our rights are being taken away from us, while everybody shoots arrows at the scapegoat. And the scapegoat, well, I was the scapegoat, wasn't I? Our brother B, he was a scapegoat. You know. Now, any individual who's been persecuted really is a scapegoat, because every individual themselves is a victim of the crimes of this world, even Keith. So, you know, we have to accept that people are damaged in many, many different ways. And the only way to address that damage is to do it lawfully and calmly, and to attend to the needs of the survivors, the victim survivors. And, you know, this is where we're at as a society, as a family. need to remove these labels. There are reasons why those labels are hanging over our heads, why we support them. You know that our mum supported ignorance. That's what she supported. And for her, that was a good survival strategy, because, let's face it, there was absolutely nothing she could have done. She would have ended up in a mental hospital if she'd have really started trying to tackle the issue then. The most she could do was survive enough to make sure that her children survived. You know. And they have made us self-sadistic, that we abuse ourselves as a family. You know, and naive, just accepting things at face value, not really looking at the bigger picture, conformist, trying to fit in. I did that for years, conformist, trying to be normal, and realising that actually no, it's all totally, I just become totally abnormal, and then complacent, and you can see that's the ball and chain. That's when you really, absolutely, yeah, I don't mind, I don't care about anything, I'm just happy to sit here and, you know. So, you know, I am trying not just to address our family problems, but to understand that this is part of a bigger picture, and it's not just our family, but our family can now be instrumental in really exposing what's been going on, and also delivering the changes that are needed in our society. And we do need to fundamentally address certain things, like the economic system that we're living in, like the law system, like the fact that, you know, we do have evidence that the very worst type of child abusers are controlling our country. And, you know, this is, I suppose, in a way, it is a battle. I've had to battle for the will to live, as you all know. And I know Brother B has tried to end his own life. You know. But meanwhile, Keith has been sailing on a cloud of glory, hasn't he? And all of his kind are, he's just, again, the microcosm of the macrocosm, that level of professionalism, consciousness, the power people, they are sailing on a cloud of glory. And the world is worshipping that consciousness through people like Keith. And as I say, I have no desire to see him, you know, stamped on the way that I was stamped on. But I do feel it is necessary to expose him in order to identify any victims, because I know what I've had to go through. I really do not want to leave other people to have to face that alone. And possibly other potential victims might have to suffer the same. And people might think, oh, it's nothing, all he did was stick his hand up a skirt, you know. But for that child, it is a really bad experience, because our sexuality is the core of our being. And when somebody violates the sanctity of a child's privacy, it is a very serious violation, and the child feels it straight away. It's like a shock to their system, and it is so bad, because only somebody that loves that person, that loves the person, has a right to touch that place, okay? Or if somebody needs to be medically examined and the child understands that this is for a specific purpose, it isn't associated, it's not happening in an odd, strange way, and it's the oddness and strangeness of it that so damages the child's mind connection then, and messes with their heart and emotions, and can distract them the wrong way. And just even one incidence of abuse, sexual abuse, that a child experiences can have severe impact on that child for the rest of the child's life if the child has no access to report it and there's no proper measures taken. And one of the reasons why so many abusers, people are prepared to support abusers, is because they're afraid of the public animosity and nastiness that goes towards people who commit such crimes. So, and this is what I mean about losing the hatred, because the hatred is actually also protecting abusers, because people won't report what they see as a minor crime because they consider the weight of public response as too severe, just for the sake of that little crime, you see. And it isn't a little crime, it's not a little thing. And hatred and anger and violence and aggression against the perpetrators, it is not helping the victims. Even victims don't want to see people being abused. In fact, most victims are the ones that really, they've experienced abuse themselves, they've witnessed abuse themselves, they don't need to witness any more violence, aggression and abuse from people claiming to be defending them, or because they care about them, because that is not the way. The way to care about this issue is to, show, give support and acceptance to people who've suffered abuse, and to listen to them, and to simply arrest abusers, not in a nasty, horrible way, but just arrest them, investigate them, identify any victims, and incarcerate them in a place where they are going to receive psychiatric therapy. Because the whole idea of identifying a criminal is to improve society and to protect society from the crimes of the criminal. And it really just so deeply upsets me to know that Keith in 2014 he received an award from the Queen, I've been told, for his outstanding contribution to child psychology. And that is just abominable. And that's the world we live in. That is the world our children are growing up in. A world where a person who has abused children and really damaged them, I lost my education, and he has been given an award for his outstanding contribution to child psychology. So if we are an example of his outstanding contribution to child psychology, then that says 100% sure, doesn't it, what this world wants and needs a child psychology to be. Because they gave him that award after I'd written to them and told them exactly what he'd done. And that is an admission of guilt to me and complicity, because they should not have given him that award. So, you know, so I'm asking you have all been indoctrinated against me. You've all been told that I'm mad and that a lie. And apparently I was jealous of you all. You know, and I'd just like to know how, in what way ever, I have ever shown jealousy to any of you. And that all I've ever done is try to help all of you and giving you good advice. And, you know, I was able to bring one child into this world. And you know what I went through to protect him and to raise him to be independent, to think for himself, to have self-respect, to have dignity. You know, in my life it came right down to a choice of £150,000 or my son's sanity, and you all know what I chose. You know, I am somebody who has put my money where my mouth is. And you know that I've even had to give my son up to his dad's son at one time in order to protect him. And, you know, I ask you all to just remember a few things that I've been writing, that I've said, you know, would happen to our family, and that I've, at the time that I've tried to prevent it and made suggestions, and you all know that what I've said, my concern, has always happened. And that, you know, when I've confronted my mum and Keith and I said to them, B needs help, and my sister, she could end up now being abused, and what did happen to our sister? How was she battered and beaten? Why is she suffering from Stockholm syndrome? We know it because she's been abused and defeated to the point of absolute despair. How many times? And even that partner who nearly killed her, beat her within an inch of her life, a month later he was doing Mum and Keith's garden. What kind of a head of educational child psychologist could accept such a person who'd almost beat his stepdaughter to death and in front of her two toddler children? What kind of a consciousness is that can invite him into his home? Could I have invited him into my home? And again, the guy needs help, you know. But it isn't, like I say, that I feel angry and hatred towards the things the abusers have done, but I don't hate the human being that is also a victim of the kind of thoughts that are controlling them to do these things. And that's what I mean about everybody alive today. We are hosts for thoughts, and the thoughts are a bit like fishes, and they will fight to survive, and some of them are sharks. So, you know, we need to round up the sharks, and there are a lot of sharks around, so we need to out them or be aware of them, not make sure they don't get into positions of power. Look out for a particular psychologist, understand that these psychologies are a danger. Understand the full depth. That it isn't just that somebody is a psychopath, it's that somebody's also a covert narcissist or a narcissist. So you recognise a narcissist, and then the human job, if you recognise a narcissist in a child, the human job is to work with that child and to address that narcissism so it doesn't take control of the child, and then through that child other people, because the child has been infected with some twisted understanding, you know. And often it's usually very, very little things that create very, very severe perversions within human consciousness. Just the fact that a child was grieving or misunderstood a situation or misinterpreted. And that slight kink can create massive patterns, and so that's why it's very important so that children especially receive bereavement counselling when they lose somebody, a member of the family, that those children are allowed to talk about how they feel. And these are the kind of things that families need to be actually facilitating as a family. But we're all conditioned to live in the so-called traditional family unit. But in real communities, before we were conditioned to live in this economic system, which started in about 1750, we did used to, when a member of the family was lost, the whole community would come and grieve, and people would talk about how they felt, and these things would happen naturally. But because we're all living in isolation and all struggling to survive in this very cold system, our children are just losing out. Parents haven't any time to spend with them. That's why I've promoted the 3-day working week, because we need to accept that part of a human being's job, a fundamental part, is raising the next generation. That's top priority. That's the whole reason why we live as a species, and every species lives. Raising the next generation is top priority. Everything else comes seconds. So employers' needs, you employers will be contributing towards raising the next generation, and these people will work for a 3-day week. Parents will work for a 3-day week and get a full living wage. And part of raising a child is also being part of a community and people investing in their own communities and working together. And then people like child abusers can't be just hidden away, because it takes 2 people to bring a child into this world, and it takes a village to raise that child, and that's the fact of it. And our children, they haven't had any village, have they? They've had the big wide concrete jungle full of its monsters and sharks and what have you. And now this economic system wants to dump an unrepayable debt onto all our children. And again, you think, oh, she's getting OTT again, we can't be addressing issues like, we're just the little people. We leave all that to these bright sparks in power to deal with. We just have a grumble about what we read in the newspaper sometimes. It's Muslims we've got to be scared of. And our family, I know our family aren't at that level. We know our family knows what's going on. We know we've lived the microcosm of it. And, that is why I'm saying, do come together, get strong. We admit what crimes we have each committed, and find forgiveness within ourselves, because that's hell, when you cannot forgive yourself. And I know my sister who's suffering from Stockholm syndrome. If she really understood what was at stake here, if she really understood that there could be other victims, very vulnerable children who'd been abused by Keith, and if she really understood that he does represent a risk to children, and if she'd really connected to her own damage and understood exactly how that had affected her, she would be horrified at what she's done. To say to the police that I'm mad and a liar, that's a serious thing, to sign a sworn statement on oath claiming that your own sister is mad and a liar against the truth of what you know is the truth. That is a very, very serious thing. And as I say, I can forgive you for doing that when you are prepared to admit that yes, you told a lie. Your sister isn't mad and a liar. What your sister said happened did really happen, and you did really tell me that. Okay? And that takes courage. And I don't blame you for not having courage, for being weak. You've been battered and abused all your life. You've been ridiculed and, laughed at. You've been compromised yourself. But as I say, we need to take courage and drop those burdens and give them back, because it's not your burden. You were conditioned to carry it like a cow or an ox is forced to plough the land, and you've been forced to, carry on as conspiracy of silence. You've been covertly manipulated into that through years of abuse. And people like Keith are thriving on it. And what kind of hope is there for the future education when you've got people like Keith writing his books on child psychology for future generations to learn? Where are those minds being directed by him and the people who support him? People who couldn't listen to me because I'm just nobody. I haven't got a piece of paper saying I'm a doctor of this or that. I'm a doctor of survival. That's what I am. And I survived, and I brought a child into this world, and I am responsible therefore for what goes on in this world. And I do expect this world now to honour what it is said, that it honours God and it believes in God. So I expect God, the concept of Jah, to be honoured, and not just by, and it's never going to be honoured by the outside world until the people, individual people, start having a revolution inside their own heads and get in touch with their own universe and their own life reality, and find the love and forgiveness of Jah, who understands how you've been manipulated and persuaded and messed up, and who can forgive fully and let people live a new life. It is like being reborn, and I haven't even been reborn completely yet because I've had to stay around to deal with so many things that I haven't been able to ascend in consciousness just yet, because I'm not prepared to ascend above the people who still need help. And then if I've ascended, then how can I help them? Okay, because I will have ascended in this world, which then my ascension will be completely compromised by all of this negativity, and there'll be a chasm. And as I'm saying, I'm not a big giant star, I'm a little shiny star, a little star, and I'm joining with other little stars. We're a cluster, and we're a power all of our own. We are an attractor, and we give. And when we do rise, we do rise in truth. And as a collective glory, not as individual big shots, but as a collective glory. And we understand that nature sends us these little stars as well, with which people of our ancient culture, before we were Romanized, we knew as a species, we knew that there were shining ones. And every society, virtually every native society, knew how to look for the shining ones among the children who had connections to a higher spirituality, who were looked for to guide, to give counsel, to keep balance, to help heal people. Such stars, they're not there to be glorified for their own sense of self. The glory of them is that they can give real help to people. Okay, whereas somebody like Keith, okay, the thoughts that are controlling him, they just want him to be glorified, but without giving to the people anything from that. The people are there to sustain his glory, to support his glory, and then then those people can be manipulated and abused in all kinds of ways, while they're mesmerised by the glorification of these individuals who are saying, we're the shining ones, we're the bright ones, and all the media lights are shining on them, and everybody's celebrating some woman because she's gone on the beach in a very, very small bikini, and she's in all the newspapers because that's such important news, and that's so important, and that's really, she's a magnificent woman because she does that. And this is how they start to connect our thoughts, our hearts, to thoughts that are just so basic, and to distract us from the real serious issues that are going on in the world. And male humans are especially susceptible to images of naked women, and sex images of women. That is, they're being bombarded with it, and their sexual psychology, psychosexuality is very vulnerable to that kind of distraction and manipulation. And they get so bombarded with it now that even women are boring, sex is boring now. They're becoming depraved, they want children. There's a massive rise in a demand for children, and that's why I've put this up, because it is terrible. Millions of children are being trafficked every single year. And this is what I mean about our family being a microcosm. That, Keith is a microcosm. And for us to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, that to understand that not everything is equally bad or good. There's we have to lose the imprint, the brand that we're branded with, of this idea that if something's bad, it's totally bad. If something's good, it's totally good. Really good people can do really bad things, and vice versa. There can be a really corrupt EU Parliament, but there can still be some really good things within the European Union. We cannot keep living by rocking the boat wildly from one side to the other. Oh, that's bad, right, we'll all go here now. Oh, that's bad, no, we'll all go here. That needs to stop. In every situation, there's always good things that can be rescued. Always something good can come out of that. Every problem is an opportunity to make life better, not to make life worse. Okay? And we do need to address this problem in our family now of lies and covering up for abusers. And as I say, it is so important now because it applies to the whole of our society. We are the microcosm. And I understand that. Just as I understood what was going to happen if our brother didn't get any help. What was going to happen to our sister if she didn't get any help. And, so I ask you now to listen to me. And you all know that I have been right on many, many times that I've expressed concerns about things and nobody's listened, and then exactly what my concerns have said have happened. And I really don't want our children to have to face the really terrible future that this present system has got in store with them, with its so-called intelligences like Keith running our whole planet. And change begins at home, and if we can change our homes, and if we can change our lives and our minds and align our hearts with universal law and love and abundance in compassion and truth and justice and respect and dignity, if we can do that as a family, we can do it as a society, we can do it as a city, we can do it as a nation, we can do it as a planet. And our planet really, really does need help right now. It is suffering like our mother was suffering, and nobody notices because she just keeps trundling on, she just keeps going on, because that's all she knows how to do, is to survive. And I don't want to witness our planet suffering the death, the terrible way that our mother died. And after what she'd suffered all her life, she never had a day's happiness, really, did she? She was always caught between all you children and Keith and the horrible things that she just couldn't face, that she didn't know what to do about, and how she just suffered in her ignorance. But that was her only choice, of staying sane enough to keep doing a job that she was doing. And that's the irony of it. But it's not an irony, it is actually iron that they depend on to keep their world going, the knowing that it doesn't matter how much people are suffering, what shit they have to deal with at home, they will get up in the morning and go to work because they need that money. And that is overriding everything. And if it means ignoring the fact that your children are being sexually abused at home, then so be it. Because if addressing that means that you're going to be so debilitated and upset that you can't even go to work, then what takes priority? And for those victims, most of them are left so incapacitated, they have no will. They don't have the same faith in the world to go and work for a house, because they know they haven't had a happy home. A lot of them don't even want to have children because they just couldn't bear for their own child to be going through, be at risk of anything that they've been through, you know. So I hope that you won't hate me for my disclosure. I hope that you will stand by me and that you will stand by the truth. Thank you.